Today, I am explaining the 4 reasons it feels so scary to let go of your ex for good and how to trust the part of you that knows that you need to break the narcissistic cycle. Hello, and welcome back. Today, we are talking about a very persistent voice that you might be feeling if you have left a narcissistic person or a narcissist and are starting to consider going back. This persistent voice has you running through every reason that maybe you made the wrong decision, that maybe it could work this time. It's taking you back through the reel of all of the moments that felt good and connected and real. And because you are still feeling really emotionally connected to your ex, even though you're physically separated, there is an amount of confusion that's happening here of I should be feeling relief that I got out, and now I'm feeling more exhausted than ever. What is going on? Why am I feeling such fear underneath that is keeping me sort of second guessing if I should go back? I want to talk today about what is actually happening because I believe that this is one of the most disorienting and scary and confusing and least talked about parts of leaving a relationship with a narcissist. So here's what this episode is going to help you see more clearly as you're navigating this fear and this persistent part of you. It's going to help you understand why your nervous system is actually rooting for him and keeping you second guessing your decision. It's going to help you understand that hidden grief that nobody warns you about when you close the door for good. And I can give you a hint that this grief is not just about him. And the third thing that you're going to understand more clearly is how to start trusting this part of you that led you to the separation, that knows the answer, even when the other persistent part is whispering, maybe it could work, maybe we should try again, maybe you made the wrong decision. So we're going to talk through all of that today. And be sure to stick around to the very end of the episode where I pull an oracle card. I actually have a new deck, so I am so excited to share that with you guys. And this message is an offering that you can use that helps you spark some connection, spark some understanding, and you can use it to stay more conscious in your healing this week. Okay, so let's take a deep breath and begin. Okay, so why it feels so scary to let him go. To say for certain, he is not good for me and I am not going back. Let's talk about it because there's a decision here. There's a decision to keep the door open, to go back to the life that you know with him, being in the partnership or the marriage, being in the family unit all under one roof if you guys have kids. And then there's the other decision, the other option is to say goodbye to the life that you know. And maybe me even just saying that is like bringing up some awareness of why this feels scary. So let's break down the 4 reasons why it feels so scary. The first is if you make the decision to not go back to the relationship, to close the door on what you knew, you are saying, I'm done, and leaving what feels familiar behind. So if you think about I don't know, I see this long hallway, and at one end of the hallway, you're stepping out of this door. That door was everything that you experienced with him and the life that you had. And if you step out of that door and you close that door, then you're in this really dark void, this dark long hallway. You can't really see the other door. There's other door way at the end that's could open to your new life, but it feels really far away. When you're at this decision point of, okay, do I close this door? Do I leave behind the familiar? That's inherently going to feel scary. It doesn't matter if the familiar was painful. And that's a really important part that I want you to hear right now is that you can know in your head, in your mind, that the relationship was painful. He is a narcissist. This is manipulative. I've been being gaslit. I've had to call the police. This is not healthy. This is toxic. I'm taking care of him financially. This isn't the way that a relationship should be. You can know that. But when you are presented with an opportunity to leave the familiar, the pain, and go into something that potentially could give you relief and likely would give you relief, it feels unfamiliar. So even though it's painful, this is the dance that you know how to do. This is the dance that you've been doing. And there's inherent safety in doing something you know how to do. So you knew and you know how to be the partner. You know how to be the wife. You know how to be the partner or wife to a man where you have to anticipate his needs, where you have to silence your needs, where you have to walk on eggshells, where you have to wait for the high highs and sustain in the low lows, right? You know how to do that. If you're a mother with a person who is narcissistic, you know how to take on the brunt of that responsibility. You know how to not trust that he's going to show up. You know how to protect your kids from the behavior that you know is not healthy. You know how to do all these things. And I'm really driving this home in that the things that we know how to do, the things that we feel competent in, even though they're unhealthy, even though they're painful, is the way that we are going to lean, is what we are going to tend to choose until the pain of that thing gets bigger than the fear. So there's a familiar saying that you will always choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. And that is because the nervous system understands familiarity as safety. So you really have this set point in your nervous system for instability, for unpredictability, for chaos. You've been in this so long that that is what feels normal. So any threat to that, even if it's stepping into peace, even if it's stepping into relief, which I know you know in your brain that you want, your body is like, that is not, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to be in that space. This feels familiar. I want to stay here. I feel comfortable here. So leaving that door is like closing the door on the familiar is going to bring up fear just inherently in any door that you are trying to close in your life. The second reason is when you close the door, you're not immediately stepping into a new familiar and a new safe place. There's this whole long hallway, this whole I see it almost like a void or like a limbo space between what was and what will be. And in this limbo space, or in this void, there's not sure footing yet. There is a period of time where you have to be in the unfamiliar before it becomes familiar. And that can be really scary. Also, when you do that, when you close the door, what tends to happen is all of your fears surface. So not just this fear of the unfamiliar, but fears like, will I be alone forever? I've left this person, I've shut this door. What if I made the biggest mistake of my life? What if I'm really unlovable? What if I'm going to be alone forever? And that can become very loud when you don't have the distraction of the chaos that you had been living in. Another thought that comes up all the time with the women who are in my Becoming program is, well, what if I actually was wrong? What if I'm the narcissist? What if I was misreading this whole entire situation? And again, I threw away the marriage and the family under one roof, and I was wrong. What if I'm going to be proven wrong? What if he actually is healthy and I'm unhealthy? What if I'm the crazy one? So you're in this dark, void hallway, this limbo space, and all of these parts of you are coming up with all of these really scary concerns and beliefs. And if you're walking that hallway by yourself, it feels really scary. And then on top of all of that, the third reason this feels really scary to shut the door for good, to choose the decision to move into the unfamiliar, is that when you close the door, it's like reality punches you in the face. If the relationship was so bad that you had to leave, then you start to look back and be like, well, why did I stay so long? What was wrong with me that I stayed so long? If it inevitably got to this point where it had to end, why did I endure all of that pain? Why did I stay? Why did I believe all of the promises? It solidifies the truth that it really was that bad. And that's a really hard pill to swallow, because not only are you starting in this self-criticism and this self-judgment around, God, if it was really that bad and I knew it was that bad, why did I stay so long? But then you start to also question, well, if he turned out like this, if this was so painful that I had to leave a person who was unhealthy, who was causing me pain, who was abusing me, then was any of that real? Did he actually ever love me? You start to question the realness of the relationship. So you're closing the door to what feels familiar. You're stepping into something that's inherently unknown, which is scary. Within this tunnel, you're starting to feel all the internal fears of beliefs of what if I'm going to be alone forever? What if I'm actually unlovable? What if I'm the narcissist? And then the reality hits you and punches you in the gut and is like, well, shit, if it really was that bad, why did I stay? Who is he really? What was that? Is any of that real? Do you see how much confusion and mental tormenting there is in this dark space? It's really intense. And that's why healing from these types of relationships, in my opinion, you have to do it with somebody else. You have to have that person that can help like anchor you to reality, to your sanity, because otherwise that dark hallway gets really fucking scary and can be unbearable. And it can be enough to send you back to what you knew. Like, this is way worse than where I was. Let's just go back and make it work. And that brings me to the fourth reason that this feels so scary to actually let go. And that is because when you are choosing to continue walking forward through this hallway, you are also closing access to potential land. Potential land is a place that you have used as an escape plan, as a place to live because the reality was painful. So when you had access to potential land, you were able to go into this place mentally where you're like, things are going to work out. This is just another hard period. He's going to apologize. He's going to start going to therapy. We're going to do couples therapy. We're going to learn how to communicate, right? It's the place where you go where everything gets better. There is hope in potential land. That is the slogan. That is the main energy in potential land is there's so much hope that this is still going to work out. And if it's going to work out, then guess what you don't have to do? You don't have to close the door. You don't have to walk through the hallway, and you don't have to feel the grief. So the fourth reason that this feels so scary to let go is because you're letting go of the hope, and then you're entering into the grief. And the grief of these types of relationships is not like the grief of normal relationships. Let's say you're going through a normal heartbreak with a mostly healthy person. There's, of course, grief that happens in that. And there's layers of sadness and sorrow and moving through nostalgia and wishing it could be different. This type of grief, though, when you have been with a narcissist or a narcissistic person, especially if you have been in a trauma bond, there's a whole nother level of grief that has to do with all of this questioning and this confusion. So you're grieving the man, not just physically in your life, not just that you loved, but you're grieving the man that he portrayed that he was in the beginning. You're understanding that that was never a real person, and that's a really hard fucking concept to grab. How do you grieve something that never existed? You're grieving who he actually is and who he could never be, right? So there's all of this identity, confusion, and grief around him. And then there's identity and confusion and grief around you. You're grieving the woman you were in all of those decision moments, in all of those experiences, in all of that abuse. You're able to look back on this relationship like, should have left then, shouldn't have believed that. Why did I say then? He controlled me for 15 years. This is one part that is so, like, I feel so honored to hold the space for my clients in my program because we use parts work language. And when we are processing through parts of the relationship, there are such tender parts of my clients that come up. There's the woman who is very clearly visioned on the kitchen floor crying after they just got in a massive fight and he walked away. There is a part of them that really believed the promise that they were going to have kids, the promise that they were going to get married, the promise of the carrot that just kept getting dangled. So as we go through healing and understanding these parts of them, it's grieving on behalf of each one of those parts for what she had to go through and how alone she felt, how much pain she felt, how much confusion she felt. So when you do grief work in a way that is really getting down there and processing through what happened in the relationship, it's going to be layered. And there's going to be a lot of parts of you that have a lot of conflicting feelings and things that need tending to, which can also feel really overwhelming if you don't have somebody that can help you move through that process and help you reflect back what is true and what is happening for you so that you don't get sort of swallowed into it. And then the other piece of the grief here is in every woman that I've worked with, there's always an amount of, I wasted so much time. I spent so many years and I left my family. I left my friends. I let him really control the way that we went on vacations with people or didn't go on vacations with people. I didn't go to certain weddings. I didn't have celebrations that I could go to that were really important. There are these big moments when they're looking back of, God, I wish I could have experienced that, or I wish I could have done that differently. And there's a lot of grief around the time that they spent, because usually these relationships, like I had one woman I was talking to recently that I loved her verbiage around this. She was like, I was low key knowing that it was not a healthy relationship for 15 years. In the back of her mind, she was in this indecision place or this questioning place of, that doesn't feel right. That's not healthy behavior. For 15 years of low key knowing and 2 years of really intensely high key knowing that she had to leave. So you're spending a lot of time. And that's part of the insidious part of narcissistic relationships, in that the confusion is, like, if there's one word that can sum up a narcissistic relationship, it's confusion. And because of the manipulation, because of the gaslighting, because of the way that they're very skilled in making their opinion true, making yours wrong, steering you towards their needs, taking you away from your needs, like, it's just so confusing. And it happens slowly over time. And so always in these relationships, there's just time that it took to understand what was happening and then to trust what you know was happening to get you to the point where you actually even have left. And so, gosh, you have already come so far. You have already come so far in trusting these moments that felt like there was no excuse. There was nothing that you could, it got too bad, right? You hit the fuck this shift where you're like, fuck this, I cannot do this anymore. And so that takes a ton of energy and a ton of self-trust. And then now to be on the other side and be confronted with this next part of the journey that also feels really scary is actually not fair. It's not fair to have to go through so much to try to get out of the relationship and heal from the relationship and stay away from the relationship. It really is one of the hardest things that you will probably do in this lifetime. So just really giving yourself some grace of understanding this hallway is scary. It's scary for many reasons. And you're not crazy because you are thinking, or there's a part of you that's thinking about going back, that's thinking, well, maybe that's actually the path of least resistance. Again, because it's familiar, it's going to feel that way. This is so common, which is why I really wanted to lay this out in this episode. So what you need to really move through this scary hallway in order to get to the door that's going to give you the life that is going to feel familiar and satisfying and peaceful and relieving is some support. So what I want you to start with is a guide that I have. It's called How to Trust Yourself More Than His Potential. It's a 3-part practice. The first part is helping you regulate your nervous system as you begin to step into this hallway so that you can really be with the fear and the overwhelm and the grief in a way that is sustainable and not going to send you back running for the other door because it feels too overwhelming. The second part of this guide includes journaling prompts to help you really reflect on the relationship without judgment and to understand the parts of you that are arguing for going back. It's going to help you find that clarity. And then the third part of the practice is really a self-trust practice, which you can use over and over again to help you really return to that self-energy part of you that knows that you can do hard things, that knows that you can find the resources that you need in order to walk through the scary part here, and that can show up as the leader to the system, acknowledging, yeah, this feels really scary because of these 4 reasons we just talked about. Walking into the unknown, having all of these underlying beliefs surface, having to really acknowledge the reality of how bad the relationship was, and starting to move through the grief, right? You're able to acknowledge, yeah, this is why this feels so scary, and I know how to support us through it. I know how to find the right people, the right resources to get us to the other door. So it's going to help you return to that confident self-energy place. And if that place feels far away, I want you to think about how you accessed that to get out of the relationship. So give yourself a piece of proof that even though she feels a little bit far away, you have tapped into her because you had to in order to make the decision to leave that relationship. So your strength is in there. I want you to go to the show notes and I want you to click through. It's a completely free guide. Again, it's called How to Trust Yourself More Than His Potential. How to trust that you can let go and be okay without having to hold on to the hope, hold on to his potential, go back into the door and restart the cycle. So it's free and it's for you. Okay, to end this episode, let's pull a card. So I got a new deck and it's called the Rose Oracle by Rebecca Campbell. I'm like obsessed with this and I'm not usually a pink person. If you know me, I don't own pink things. I don't rarely even paint my nails pink. But this deck is so beautiful and it is like pink and rose is the theme. So I don't know, it just felt, for some reason, it called to me. So here's what we have for today. The Great Mother. So let me find the Great Mother in the book and I will read to you what it says. The Great Mother ushered you in when you took your first breath, and she'll be there when you draw your last. She knows how challenging life on earth can be, that at times being human can be painful, lonely, and confusing, that the polarity and separation can be difficult when your soul remembers the oneness of Source, but at the same time it can be incredibly glorious and sweet. We often see things as either good or bad. When things go well, we make it mean that everything's okay. When things don't work out, then perhaps we've done something wrong or have something to fix. We've forgotten that life on Earth isn't like that. Polarity is at the core of Earth's experience, and it's through the polar extremes that we grow the most. We're not meant to avoid the night, the shadow, the winter. This life is but a single breath in the inextinguishable existence of your experience as a soul. Hand over your worries, hurt, sorrow, fears, and doubts to the Great Mother. Lay them on her altar. Return to the sureness of the soil. Fall fully into her arms. Surrender to the mystery woven through it all. Remember that while these extremes are difficult, they are also magnificent. That unrestrained joy is closer to grief than we think. And perhaps the more wildly the pendulum of your life swings, the more you can say, I have truly lived. There's a transmission at the end here that I'll read as well. It says, I'm ready to embrace the extremes of my life. I lay all that I am carrying onto the altar and fall into the Great Mother's arms. Oh, wow. This deck is powerful. Every time I read a card, I'm like, that was a good choice. Yes to that. Yes to trusting. One big part of the healing in my experience, it was actually the first time that I felt reconnected to source energy or to something greater than myself. Whether for you that is the Great Mother, or that is the universe, or that is Source, or that is God, whatever word resonates for you, having something bigger than you to help surrender into, to help guide you through, is also another beautiful tool that we bring to help ourselves feel more safe and more regulated as you're doing a hard thing. So I really love that message, and I hope that that lands for you. Please go to the show notes, download that guide, and until I see you in the next episode, please remember that you're not alone.